Welcome to our salvation series. Our hope is to do a 5-part series over the topic of salvation. Hope you can tune into all 5 parts. Today we'll be discussing the most tragic event of all times. It is a story of deceit, defeat, loss. It is a story that can really be categorized in a number of genres. Action, horror, you name it, it fits right in. And this is the topic of the fall of man. The fall of man was indeed the most tragic thing that has happened to mankind. The most tragic. And we really can't understand what really took place unless we understand why we were created. What was the purpose? Why is it that God put us on this earth? And we'll refer to 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. And it says, "For God, who said, 'Let light shine out of darkness,' made his light shine in our hearts, to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us." So this tells us that God created mankind to have his light shine in man. When it's talking about the jars of clay, it's referring to us. His jars of clay that he created so that his all-surpassing power would be indwelled in these jars and that he could express himself through us. So God wanted to shine his light through mankind, through his creation, and to essentially express himself through us. Now, at the time of creation, that was his intention. He wanted to receive glory from his creation. He wanted to express himself through his creation. So he made us perfectly in his image. The Bible tells us that we were made up of 3 parts, right? 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 tells us what are the 3 parts? Body, soul, spirit. Exactly. Body, soul, and spirit. The body, the physical part of us is what the body refers to. The soul is referring to the psychological part of us, and the spiritual is the innermost part of mankind that interacts with the spiritual world, whether it be God or things of the enemy, evil spirits. And so all these three parts, God made us perfectly in his image. We were in perfect fellowship with God, with our Creator. We were in perfect unison with him. But then tragedy struck. So when God instructed Adam not to partake from the fruit, he told him that you will surely die. The one question is, okay, he didn't die. He went on living 900 whatever something years. He didn't die. And the interpretation of that verse is that there was a spiritual death that took place. So when Adam and Eve partook in the fruit, in the eating of the fruit, which was completely against what God had instructed Adam to do, at that point there was a spiritual death. And that is when sin and death made its grand entrance into the world. That is when man became separated from his Creator. So now at this point, man is spiritually dead, separated from God. We've become enemies of God in our minds. We're physically sinful. Physically, we have now fleshly desires. And so that is the tragedy. That is what took place during the fall. But praise be to God That is not where our story ends. That's not where my story ends. And that is not where anyone that puts their faith in Christ, that is not where the story ends. That is just the beginning.
When we talk about the fall, somebody might ask the question that, what type of tree was it? What kind of fruit did they eat? But all these questions are beside the point, because ultimately we have to look at the big picture, which is, it's a story about trusting and obeying God. When he told them, don't eat from this tree, that you can eat from any tree, but not this tree, he was trying to relay the point that he wanted them to trust him in that and to obey him for what he said. And so, it didn't have to be a tree. It could have been, like we said, a button. It could have been, something that said, don't press this, and they pressed it. But ultimately, we have to ask the question ourselves, do we trust and obey God when he tells us, to avoid these things and to not do certain things, or to do things? Do we do them, and do we trust him in that? And so that's what we should really be focusing on.
And one of the other questions that gets asked is, I wasn't there, right? I had no part in what happened in the Garden of Eden. Why am I faulted, right? Or why do I have to live under pain, suffering, death, whatever it might be, having had no part in that entire scenario, right? And so the answer is what we now call original sin. So we basically inherit this condition from our father Adam, right? We are part of his lineage. Mm-hmm. We're part of his descendants, right? We, in God's eyes, we were present in Adam when this took place, right? And for that reason, we have inherited his condition. We've inherited his spiritual status, which is basically we're born into death, right? So whether we were there or not, at birth, we have that very fallen nature that Adam had instantly when he disobeyed God, right? So, and that's just by virtue of being in his lineage, right? And so it's not so much about, well, I haven't had my chance to commit the sin. Why am I being faulted? It's the fact that in God's eyes, all humankind, everyone who has come after Adam, through the line of Adam, is born in this state called fallen nature, right? And it's because of what we call original sin.
Another question that a lot of people ask is this: did God know before they committed the sin? If yes, then why did he do that? Why did he plant even that tree? And a lot of kids ask this question for real. Yes, God did know, because God knows everything. He is the omniscient God, meaning things don't have to happen for God to know. He knows the beginning from the end, everything. He knows eternity before it even happened. But the biggest question that they ask, why? Why did then he plant it? He didn't plant 50 good ones and 50 bad ones. He didn't put 80 good ones and 20 bad ones. He just made, out of the whole Garden of Eden, there was only one tree that Adam was not supposed to eat from. And he did that because he wanted Adam to be a free man. He gave him enough knowledge to understand what is good and bad. He taught him real well, and he said, Adam, don't eat from this tree. But he planted it so Adam will be 100% free. Unless you have a choice, there is no freedom. You have to have other choices to be free. So he gave him that tree. He put that tree in the Garden of Eden for Adam to be 100% free. Then he decided in his own ways to choose against God.
So today we discussed the fall of man. At one point we were in complete unity and complete fellowship with our Creator. When tragedy struck and we were spiritually separated, mentally separated, physically separated from our Creator, that's when the fall of man took place. But praise be to God that is not where the story ends. Because of his mercy and grace, we have been given a second chance. And we'll talk further into those things, so stay tuned.